else.
So going on my last video there, I did raise a question within that video about how come there's 15,000 left and they're all coach packages. I was thinking, well, why is it that there's so many damn coach packages? So this would explain why the Joshua event hasn't sold out, among other things, of course. Now, for me, a lot of it is the undercard as well. But anyway, I've now got the answer, and it's via the Express, where Eddie Hearn gave it an exclusive to, and this is what Eddie Hearn had to say. The only tickets that won't go are the 15,000 we can only sell as part of a coach package. That was part of the deal. We have done 3,000 to 4,000, but people just don't want to come by coach. However, we will get over 80,000 in Wembley. We had done over 70,000 a month ago. It has been slower than the Klitschko and Joseph Parker. The only thing that aggravates me is that anyone in boxing I've spoken to says it's a tough fight with Povetkin, whereas the man on the street goes to me and says, where's the Deontay Wilder fight? I'll say he has to get through Povetkin first, and they say, well, he'll knock him out. But who knows? If Povetkin had come over and tried to nut Joshua at the press conference, we would have sold out immediately. There are a lot of people saying, I will come in April for the Wilder fight. We have over 80,000 in there. He has sold over 300,000 tickets for his last 4 fights. We have to work a little bit harder this time. Normally when you go on sale with an Anthony Joshua fight, it just goes ping. You will always have bits and pieces with a fighter bringing tickets back. The VIP tickets at 2,000 each sold out in 20 minutes. I think the pay-per-view will end up in tears at some point, because what will happen is we're in a strong position because our platform is solid and it's proven. But what will happen in other fighters will take risks on pay-per-views. That won't work. For example, Warrington versus Carl Frampton. If it did 100,000 buys on pay-per-view, I'd be astonished. And if we go on the 22nd of December for Dylan White versus Derek Chisora, it won't do 50,000 buys. So how the fight is going to make money? Too much pay-per-views, you can't say it's good for boxing, because it's not. You look between September and December, you have Canelo and Triple G. What does that do? 30,000, 40,000 in the UK. You have Joshua versus Povetkin. Parker did 1.2 million, which was huge, but they expect another 7 figures for Povetkin. Then you've got George Groves against Callum Smith on a Friday night, which will struggle. October, nothing. Great news. Then hopefully we have Usyk Bellew, 10th of November. Then we'll do 3rd of November for Josh Taylor and Ryan Burnett. And then the 1st of December, reportedly, Wilder Fury. And then the 8th could be Pacquiao Khan. Then the 22nd of December, White versus Chisora. So that is Eddie Hearn's statement. So I think the Express were putting some bits and bobs in the wrong kind of place. But anyway, that doesn't matter. So the point is, there's 15,000 tickets unsold, and he's predicting that 5,000 of those 15 will get sold, and they are coach packages. He can't change it. But ultimately, I mean, I understand it's part of the deal because it's Wembley, and Wembley want coach packages because it's easier for people to get in. If you can fit like 60 people to a bus, a coach, whatever. I have no idea how many people you can fit onto a coach. I haven't been on a coach since I was a kid. But if you can, 60 people, is that a modest guess maybe? Then how many people are willing to go on a coach? Probably not too many, to be honest. I mean, for me, when I go to boxing events or football or whatever it may be, I want to make my own way there. If I can go with a couple of mates, great, we'll car share. We'll jump on a bus, we'll go on a train, we'll do whatever. Okay, but what I don't want to be doing is sat on a coach with, 60 other people, stinking, burping, farting, doing stupid things, trying to be the centre of attention. For me, I don't want that. So Wembley, listen up, man. Release some of those tickets as individual sales. Otherwise, you're going to have 10,000 seats in that stadium unsold. Now, I know that he is blaming some of the coach packages. For me, it's not entirely that. I mean, that certainly doesn't help. That is for sure. But if you've got Joshua versus Povetkin, again, he says that a lot of people say, well, I just want to watch Joshua fight Wilder. And that's a fair comment. But Povetkin is dangerous. Don't forget that Wilder didn't want none of Povetkin. At the very first opportunity, he ducked Alexander Povetkin, and I've covered that 100 times, and he has. So Povetkin is dangerous. He's never been stopped, okay? He's never been knocked out. His only loss on his record is against Vladimir Klitschko, where Vladimir Klitschko was elbowing him, giving him suplexes and tombstone pole drivers. He was doing all kinds of illegal things in that fight, and where Klitschko should have really, I suppose, been disqualified. But he did all that because he knew Povetkin was a live wire and he's dangerous. Now, Povetkin, he is 39 years old. He's just turned 39. And over the last couple of fights, he does appear to have slowed down a bit against Christian Hammer. He didn't look like the Povetkin that we used to. And against David Price as well. He did get caught, but he made a little error in that one. But either way, he got rocked, he came back, and he stopped David Price. But to be fair, he was supposed to. But Povetkin is a dangerous, dangerous live wire opponent. So that aside, I don't know why people say that Joshua is going to blitz through him in 2 or 3 rounds. I don't get the thinking behind that. If he does, great. But for me, at least on paper, this should be a very hard fight. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Joshua hits the canvas himself in this fight. This is a very hard fight, and I don't want people to expect a absolute blitz through and it doesn't happen, because then you're just going to be disappointed. For me, I'm expecting a long, hard fight. If Joshua can stop him and be the first person to stop him as well, great. If he puts on a lackluster performance and maybe somewhat of a boring fight, maybe like it was with Joseph Parker, and gets the win, great. I don't care how he does it as long as he wins. And that's just my perspective, of course. But again, had the undercard been, and I keep talking about this, okay, but had the undercard been as good as what they usually are on a Joshua card, then this would have sold easier. And that's just my opinion. It would have. While the fights on the undercard are good, nothing really stands out. For me, the only one that really kind of stands out is Matty Askin versus Lawrence Okoli. And again, that's just my opinion. But how many people actually know Matty Askin, have heard of him? People know Lawrence Okoli because he's managed by Anthony Joshua. And every time he does a social media tweet, he's got a picture of Anthony Joshua in there. I mean, and I like Lawrence Okoli. I think he's funny. He put out a post recently saying that, I'm going to be fighting on September the 22nd and I've got Joshua on my undercard. For me, Okoli is doing everything correct and I'm looking forward to that fight. Luke Campbell versus Mendy, for me, is not a supporting act. It's not the supporting headliner. I'm not keen on that fight as far as a top of the range fight. And I know it's going to be a good fight. I know it is, but again, on paper, it doesn't look that good. Kuzmin versus David Price, that's a interesting fight, but I do feel that David Price has been thrown to the wolves again. I think David Price is being forced into journeyman kind of status now, where he's there just for a circus act, a viewer's pleasure, I suppose, because people know who David Price is, and we all hope and pray that he was going to get past Povetkin, and we're going to do exactly the same with Kuzmin. So that is going to get eyes to the telly, and that's why he's there, I feel. But ultimately, I think Kuzmin is going to do a number on him. Kuzmin is dangerous. I seen a video yesterday, and it had Kuzmin versus Joe Joyce in the amateurs, and he annihilated Joe Joyce in the very first 30 seconds of that very first round. Just annihilated him, dropped Joe Joyce down to the canvas and just beat him up. Okay, so Kuzmin is dangerous. He's 12-0, 9 knockouts from Russia as well. And of course, he is there because he's part of the promotional team World of Boxing that Povetkin is part of as well. But the undercard is lacking. And if the undercard was as good as what a Joshua card usually is, because it is Wembley Stadium, it is pay-per-view, all effort should be on this one, right? But for me, I think that the White versus Parker, that is the standard of the year so far, and that was an epic event, epic main event. Undercard was stellar. And I'm usually pretty good at predicting how a show is going to go. And I knew that White versus Parker was going to be an epic card and was worthy of pay-per-view. But is Joshua Povetkin? Just because Joshua's on the card doesn't necessarily make it pay-per-view. We've become so accustomed to an undercard that, for me, it's a little lackluster. But again, he's talking about the pay-per-view model. So he's saying how the pay-per-view model is going to suffer at some point because fighters want big money, and the only way to give them big money is by putting it on pay-per-view. And eventually people are going to get fed up with the amount of pay-per-views that's coming up. But to be fair, I think Eddie Hearn is part of the issue with the pay-per-view, right? He has put on a lot of pay-per-views. And some of them, to be fair, I've bought all of them and I've agreed with all of them, to be fair. But, I just think that there can be such a thing as overkill. There really can. And for me, again, he's talking about White Chisora pay-per-view. But is that pay-per-view? I mean, I'll always support Dylan White. You guys know that. And if Dylan White is on a pay-per-view against, I don't know, a rematch against Malcolm Tan, I'll pay for it because I'm a huge Dylan White fan. But is that fight kind of like not really that important now? For me, again, as a boxing fan, I want to see Dylan White against Dominic Brazil to sort out that mandatory position. And then the WBC have already said that in December they're going to call the mandatory, which means that Wilder must face his mandatory next, or a unification against Joshua. So maybe Eddie Hearn doesn't want the Brazil fight. Maybe it doesn't sell as well as what it would do with Chisora. And maybe he's right on that point, but I think if there's an opportunity to get Dylan White versus Deontay Wilder in early part of next year instead of Joshua versus Wilder, again, I'm being a bit of a fanboy here with White, but I think that White should be given that opportunity first. That's just my opinion. But anyway, I mean, Usyk versus Bellew, for sure, that's going to be pay-per-view. And people will get tired of it, that's for sure, especially with BT Sport. They're going to be doing their pay-per-views as well. For me, I don't agree that Canelo and Triple G should be pay-per-view because it's not a fight in the UK. That's just my argument there, and it doesn't involve a UK fighter. Wilder versus Tyson Fury, okay, that's fine to be a pay-per-view because it does involve a UK fighter. Warrington versus Frampton, again, that's going to rely on a great undercard. And I keep talking about undercards, it's what I've always done. And I want Frank Warren to give us a great undercard because just that fight alone isn't enough to do well on the pay-per-view. That's just my opinion. But anyway, you drop me yours and click that thumbs up and subscribe while you're there. Catch you all on the next video.